Senator Cornyn, then Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is part of your portfolio to make sure that sanctions that have been issued by the United States government cannot be evaded?
Absolutely. We're looking to plug the holes.
And it's come to my attention that Russia is exploiting a loophole in Western sanctions by selling large stockpiles of gold to buy high-value currency in order to avoid the negative impact of sanctions on the ruble. The European Union foreign ministers added gold to the list of their banned Russian imports as part of a series of tweaks on Monday to their sanctions against Russia. Is this an area that you all are involved in or concerned about?
So the question of what gets sanctioned and the economic countermeasures themselves is generally a question that is undertaken in the first instance by the Treasury Department or the Commerce Department. They consult with the Department of Justice, of course. But the sort of core concern there, should we sanction gold, should we sanction any other commodity, is one that is generally led by Treasury or Commerce. What we do have our eye on, however, are sanction evasion networks. And in some instances, what that may mean is the laundering of the proceeds of evasion through a commodity, whether the commodity is sanctioned or not.
Well, Mr. Maduro in Venezuela has perfected the art of evading U.S. sanctions by selling gold. And this is an area that I know the Treasury Department is trying to address, but there are other authorities that I think could be added to what Treasury is doing. Wouldn't contradict it, would supplement those authorities, which would maybe have a more effective outcome. I just want to ask about the predicate for seizure of these assets. As I understand S 3838, it says that the president may only confiscate funds or property from a foreign person whose wealth, according to credible information, is derived in part through corruption linked to, or it's a disjunctive, political support for the regime of the president of the Russian Federation. Is it your understanding that the legislation would authorize seizure of these assets for political support for the regime of the president of the Russian Federation without proof of any other fact?
Thank you, Senator. I don't have the particular language directly in front of me. My understanding is generally that the impetus and the precondition for seizure is a tie to criminal activity or corrupt activity.
Well, that would be consistent with civil forfeiture regimes used at the federal and state level under current law, correct?
That's correct, and current law requires that there be a tie to criminal activity.
Well, I agree with Senator Graham's characterization of the Russian Federation as a mafia state. There's no question in my mind about that. I want to make sure that we don't do things which inadvertently could be used against the United States or our friends and allies. Because if we end up seizing foreign assets, we've got plenty of assets that might be seized under some theory or rationale. So I think as long as it's tied to proof of a crime, you're on solid ground. But if it's a more vague or amorphous predicate, then I am concerned about that. Are you concerned about reciprocity, that maybe the Russian Federation or some other foreign government might turn the tables on the United States and seize U.S. property?
As you say, Senator, there's a distinction between us and a law-abiding, rule-of-law nation committed to due process, which this task force is absolutely dedicated to supporting, and our adversaries who are, in contradistinction, decidedly not dedicated to those things.
With respect to you make an important point. We're not talking about moral equivalency here, but we are talking about due process of law. What court would have jurisdiction over such a case?
From a jurisdictional perspective, federal courts, I think, would clearly have subject matter jurisdiction. With respect to the question of venue or where these cases would be brought, it would depend on the facts of a particular case.
And personal jurisdiction, I think Senator Whitehouse was making a distinction there about jurisdiction over the seized asset itself. It's pretty hard to get personal jurisdiction over the oligarch, him or herself, correct?
It certainly depends. From the criminal perspective, assuming that there's an act that's happening in the United States, we would have the ability to bring the charge. Actually, arresting an oligarch who's sitting in Russia is obviously a tall order.
Thank you.
Senator